Why Africa? What was the attraction?
I'd always felt, being in England, things were mediocre. Things were constrained, you know, whereas here it's extreme. Wide open spaces, extremes of climate, you know, and challenges in life. It just felt right, somehow. It just felt, yes, this is the sort of feeling of freedom and space that just feels good.
Kes Hillman Smith is taking me to visit some old friends. And this is their stunning, sweeping domain. And this is what you mean by wide open spaces. This is it.
Yeah, this is it.
Spectacular. Almost 40,000 hectares, 5 hours from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, a haven called Ol Pejeta. And on this hilltop, the final refuge for two of the rarest animals on Earth, Northern White Rhinos. So here are two girls.
Yeah.
Introduce me, who are they?
Okay, well, the bigger one is Najin, the older, the mother of Fatu, the younger one.
Najin and Fatu have got plenty of room, but what they don't have is time. They're the last two female Northern White Rhinos left anywhere in the world. You get excited every time you see them, don't you?
Yeah, I love seeing them, but it's an excitement touched with a bit of sadness.
Why the sadness?
Yeah. Well, this is a kind of last-ditch stand, but, you know, there's still hope.
And hope is what has sustained Kes in a battle against overwhelming odds to save the Northern White Rhino. At a compound nearby, she takes me to meet the very last surviving male. Here he is. Hey.
Hey, Sudan. Hey, boy.
Hey, big guy.
Hey, boy.
The last male.
Yeah.
Sudan's legs are weakened by arthritis. He's almost blind in one eye. A lonely, gentle giant, long past his prime and unable to reproduce.
Sudan seems to be too old to mate himself, but it's nice to be with them.
When you're down to the last remaining 3 Northern White Rhinos left on the planet, you are talking about a technically extinct species, because the chances of recovery from such low numbers is pretty small. Okay, so they would have to be brought in every single evening?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan.
That's Fatu and Najin.
Yeah, Fatu and Najin.
Richard Vignier is the CEO of the Rhino Century, and he shares Kes's deep frustration that only 3 remain.
And you can separate them from the other rhinos?
The southern white.
Yeah.
He's implemented high security measures around the perimeter of Ol Pejeta to protect the last 3 Northern Whites and keep the other rhino species safe.
If you're a poacher right now, if you are able to get a hold of a set of reasonably sized rhino horns, you can sell them for probably, I don't know, the equivalent of $50,000 US. We get threatened by poachers on a regular basis. We lost a rhino a week and a half ago, and we've lost 4 in the last 6 months.
You've come against battle after battle after battle in your fight to save these rhinos.
It's rather what conservation is like, I'm afraid. You're always up against something, and if you feel it's worth it, you just keep fighting for it. It's good to have something meaningful that you want to fight for, and you look at these amazing areas and these incredible animals, and that's worth fighting for.
For Kes, it's been a long and difficult fight that began more than 40 years ago. Kes was part of a wave of zoologists that came to Africa in the 60s and 70s. Among them, the legendary Dian Fossey, who devoted her life to protecting mountain gorillas. Kes was never as famous as Fossey, but her work as the global guardian of the Northern White Rhino was just as important.
They were very low numbers, they were seriously threatened, they needed a lot of help, but they also represented incredible areas of habitat.
As Kes began her work to stop the poaching, on the other side of the world, in San Diego, California, a revolutionary approach to saving species from extinction was also just beginning. A scientist was collecting cells from endangered species and freezing them.
And he, at that time, had no idea how these cells could be used. He just knew it was imperative to save them. What a brilliant idea to start the frozen zoo in 1975.
And how many samples do you have now?
Tens of thousands, maybe 100,000.
Reproductive specialist Dr. Barbara Durant and geneticist Dr. Oliver Ryder
Those look good.
are part of a small team at the San Diego Safari Park working on ways to use state-of-the-art cellular and IVF techniques to save species from extinction. We're now down to the last 3 Northern White Rhinos.
That's right. We've just watched them one by one disappear, first from the wild and then in the captive populations. We realized, in the last couple of years that our efforts had to step up significantly if we were going to save any of the species at all.
This is a Burmese python.
The lab has had success in saving other species. The work here helped bring back the majestic California condor from the brink of extinction. There were around 20. Now there are 450. But saving the rhinos will be an even greater challenge. In addition to the 3 living rhinos in Africa, the frozen zoo has tissue samples from 12 others. Can it restore the Northern White Rhinos?
We have a big effort underway to evaluate whether the material we have saved will be sufficient. We believe it will. There's nothing cuter than a baby rhino.
Back at Old Pagetta, 4-month-old Ringo is proof that a rhino species can recover. He's an orphan southern white rhino with an enormous appetite. Almost a century ago, they were on the brink of extinction. Now, thanks to a conservation effort, there are 20,000. It was Kes's hope all those years ago that she could do the same for the Northern White. She was a young British zoologist with a very English name, Alison Gibbons. She got a new one from a Maasai tribe.
They gave me the name Kesanyonye, which means live in peace. I've been Kes ever since.
Kes worked in one of the most spectacular parts of Africa, Garamba National Park in the northeast Congo. She married a park ranger and raised a family.
Life revolved around the park and the bush and animals. And our way of transport was flying.
From the air, Kes was able to study the movement of the rhinos and their numbers.
Yeah, it's a sort of soap opera of who's mating who and, who's had a baby recently and who's where and who's taken over this territory. And yeah, it was like a soap opera and quite exciting. Every time you go out, something's changed.
To understand their mating patterns, she would go in the field and from a safe distance, fire a well-aimed dart. The rhino is alarmed but unhurt. Kes walks away with valuable DNA.
When you're down to a last-ditch stand like this for such an important and charismatic large mammal subspecies, you've got to do everything you can.
Her team helped the Northern White Rhino population increase from 15 to 32. But then, this. War broke out in the Congo.
She was fighting against overwhelming odds in a part of Africa which has been through some really turbulent, tumultuous times. I have massive admiration for people who do that kind of thing.
This was the biggest poaching camp they'd found in the park.
With the stakes raised, the conservationist turned commando. Kes led a campaign of guerrilla warfare against the poachers.
Basically, the poachers were winning. They were coming in bigger and bigger groups. They were coming in armed with grenades and rocket launchers and everything else.
Did you lose people?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you lose people. And you eliminate poachers. But you definitely, yes, you lose people.
By 2008, the battle to save the wild rhinos had been lost. The only ones left anywhere were in zoos.
They weren't breeding, at least breeding had been problematic. So we agreed to bring the last 4 potentially reproductive animals out to Kenya in the hope that in a more natural environment, in more natural social circumstances, they would start to breed.
It was great to see them. It was wonderful. We also slept out there and listening all night to the sound of the rhinos munching. I really think, this is it. This is a, another stage of being able to save Northern White Rhinos.
But the plan hit a significant obstacle. Najin and Fatu could not reproduce. And then the younger male died of a stroke, leaving just Sudan. Kes is holding on to the faint hope that science might now come to their rescue.
There's a lot of stuff going on now with genetics, with the kind of cloning and developing stem cells and all sorts of things which sound very exciting. It's not beyond the realms of possibility.
So we think there's enough of a genetic base to bring back this species. We're applying all of our efforts towards assisted reproduction and cellular technologies. We've put together a truly wonderful international team of experts to work on this problem.
One approach is to make stem cells from rhino skin tissue and create an embryo, a living rhino from nothing more than rhino skin. The other is to harvest eggs from Fatu and Najin and then fertilize them with sperm from Sudan. In both cases, the embryo would be implanted into one of these healthy southern white rhinos in San Diego.
We're developing some new techniques altogether, and some techniques that have been used for decades in cattle and horses and pigs and humans, but we're applying them for the first time to rhinos.
So is it too late to save them?
We don't think so.
What an amazing achievement that would be for all those who have worked so hard to save them.
She devoted herself and risked her life to try to save these rhinos. I think her efforts are heroic.
What are your hopes? What are the prospects for the rhino now?
I think it's hopeful. It's definitely hopeful. It's very, we're right on the edge. We've caused the problem. We need to do something about it.